I'm back. I'm back with a new show. I'm so excited, you guys. I have a previous guest on our show today, and it means a lot to me because there are so many people, so many. I'm sure you wouldn't have to even think very far or think very long about having a son or a brother that has passed away from addictions, from overdose, from mental health issues. And we do not have to look far for that to be something that we need to all look at. And I'm bringing today a very special guest that I've had on our show before, and I will definitely add it to the description down below because it's very special to me. We don't talk about this enough. We don't talk about grief. We don't talk about overdoses. We don't talk about any of that kind of stuff. And today we have a great show, Shattered Dreams, a mother-daughter conversation on schizophrenia and addiction. So that being said, my name is Tina Ginn. I'm here from your Backup Plan app. I am a financial advisor and a creator and developer of your Backup Plan app, as well as a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. That's right. Just that quick second that your life changes in an instant, in the blink of an eye, forever. And it's so very, very true. I've lived it myself. I've lived it with other guests that have come on our show, now going into our 4th year. So if you haven't liked, share, and subscribe to our channel down here below there, then make sure you do, because we bring special guests on our show every week. And I'm so excited to have this one. We are going to be having a special guest next month on our show, a brother of Jimi Hendrix. And that's going to be an awesome show as well, talking about how Jimi Hendrix left his estate and what a mess it was for the family that was left behind. We talk about real life stories on our show with really amazing guests, and our shows that have changed their life forever with tragedies, trauma, sickness, or accidents. And that's what we're all about on our show. In the blink of an eye, your life changes forever. And sometimes we're not given any 5-minute evacuation notice. Sometimes we're not given anything at all. The doctor says you now have cancer, or the accident just came and hit you, and you don't get a 5-minute evacuation notice for that. You don't say, hold on a second, I get my 5 minutes, you can't hit me yet. That's not how it happens. It happens that quickly. And so we have created this app so that people have a better planning process. They can put their passwords in it. They can put their investments and accounts in it. They can put their wills and power of attorneys in it, and all of that kind of emergency preparedness that we talk about, emergency kits and grab-and-go bags and all of that fun stuff. So that being said, let's get the party started. We have a quick commercial, and then I'll bring on Debbie and Stephanie. See you in a minute. Welcome back to our show. with our two wonderful, wonderful guests. Her name is Debbie Gale Zane and her daughter Stephanie Loomis. And they come to us from beautiful Virginia, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from us here in Canada. So, welcome, welcome. Let's bring on Debbie. She is a author, a new author at that, as well as a coach and advocate, and her daughter Stephanie. Thank you for coming on, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's like a mutual, it's like a tango. That's so awesome. So I'm not sure if one of you want to start and then the other one just adds in whatever they wish. It's all going to be good. This story that comes from Debbie and Stephanie is a true life story of your son who had schizophrenia and addictions. And I wanted Stephanie on the show as well to talk about how that was for you as the sister and in the house and what that did to you as well. So where do you want to start, Debbie, with the story? Because we've had you on before and we're going to have it linked down below as well for the previous show as well.
Yeah, either Stephanie or I could start. I'm good with either one.
You got this, Mom. You start us off.
Yeah, so like you said, it all started when my oldest son, Alex, Stephanie's older brother, was about 17 years old. And up until then, I felt like he had a pretty normal childhood and teen years. And one day, it was Thanksgiving weekend, the day after Thanksgiving exactly, and he came to me and described how he wanted to kill himself. And he said that he had actually attempted it before, and he described exactly what he did. And in that moment, as a mom, that's like one of the hardest things to hear. And him describing it, it's like I couldn't get that image out of my head. And it just, things only got worse from there. That led to a 3.5 week hospitalization, where the first time he was ever, diagnosed with a mental illness.
Yeah.
And
what did it feel like for you, Debbie? Because we can ask Stephanie the same question. I think it would feel like somebody just took a dagger and went into your heart. Do you think that would be a good explanation?
yeah, I do. I remember one of the things that I was always able to do as a mom is no matter how I felt inside, I would try to stay calm so that I could listen, because he came to me because he wanted to talk, he wanted to share. So inside, I think I'm screaming inside. Inside,
Yeah.
I'm screaming. Inside, I'm scared. Inside, I'm not, I'm just, there isn't a manual for how to be a mom in this situation. And
No, in many situations. I'm like, where's that manual? It's got to be in there somewhere.
yeah, but on the outside, I was trying to be there for him to share what he needed to talk about, that he came to me. But yeah, I feel like it just knocked the wind out of me. I mean,
Yeah.
and
You want to yell and scream and hit them as well as be comforting and
I wanted to scream, but there was no one to scream to. I was the only adult in the house with 3 teenagers, and um, it was just
you need
really,
that you need the book where you go to that tab and say when the sun does
what do I do
this.
next?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, luckily we had this wonderful, at the time, this wonderful doctor that I had already, it was the family doctor. I had already transitioned since my boys were both older, getting older teens. I transitioned him to her. And she was kind of on call all the time. She was in her own practice, so I was actually able to call and get a hold of her. And she called the psychiatric hospital and had somebody call and like kind of do a like pre-intake interview with him on the phone before I
Kind
brought
of like
him
an
in.
intervention or something, like almost like.
Kind of. I mean, it was like getting late at night on a Friday night, and I was surprised. Like after talking to him, she told me that I remember her saying to bring him in first thing in the morning, and they would talk to him and evaluate him and likely admit him, and
Yeah.
to pack a bag. And I remember thinking, how do we make it through the night? Like how like what am I supposed to do tonight? Like,
Yeah.
and she said that after talking to him, she said he would be safe. And I mean, I'm thinking like, are you sure? How do you know?
Yeah, because you're letting your kid go now and you're not sure how they're going to be.
Yeah.
And how did you feel, Stephanie? When did you first find out? The same way?
Yeah, I think that is when I found out too. My brother and I were really, really close. So he would typically share things with me, but it was almost like just like a switch flipped, he seemed like he had, a typical life. He had a lot of friends, he did sports, and, I didn't really notice him seeming depressed or anything like that. And then it felt like just one day, it just switched. And I was crushed. I was heartbroken when I found out that my brother was feeling that way because, like I said, we were really close. And
Yeah.
I was constantly worried about him, and, yeah, it was just awful, my both of my brothers and I are very close, especially when we were younger, so he felt like a close friend to me,
Yeah.
and obviously it's my brother, I love him so much. It was really, really hard.
Because you're worried about them at the same time. And
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So where did it go from there then, Debbie?
Like I said, he was hospitalized for 3.5 weeks, and during that time, um, he talked a lot about how he had been feeling, and that was a shock to me too, because kind of like Stephanie said, he had this before that things seemed normal. He was really into sports. He ran track and cross country all throughout high school. He had all these friends, and this was the beginning of his senior year. And he shared about how he had been paranoid that people were spying on him, and he had blocked off all the windows in his room and blocked off all the light coming in, and just all these things that he shared that I had no idea at all. And
Yeah.
it was just all new for me. And from there, I think the rest, it was hard the rest of his senior year getting him to graduate. Like I remember when he graduated thinking, like, kind of breathing a sigh of relief, like, okay, we got through the rest of high school, because it was really hard.
Because you're
And
probably thinking that had a correlation between it or something, right? That maybe once he gets out of there, then I can understand that.
I wasn't sure. And when he was in the hospital, they said he had been also using drugs. I don't remember if at that point it was only marijuana. So I think it did start out as just marijuana, but by the time he graduated, I'm pretty sure it had by then already moved to other drugs as well. So life was really unpredictable,
Yeah.
and difficult, because we, looking for doctors for him, the hospital advised we find a psychiatrist, we find a therapist. Getting him on the right medications was a huge trial and error process.
Oh, yes.
A lot of them didn't work, or had bad side effects, or both, or made him worse, made him fall asleep during the day. I mean, all kinds of things. It was pretty crazy. And so
Is
just
there
getting
a reason, Debbie, is there a reason that you know of that why a switch turns like that? Is there?
That's a really good question. So at the time, we were told that there could be like a hereditary component. He did have on his dad's side, I think his dad's uncle had schizophrenia. And then there was some addiction there too on the dad's side.
Right.
I don't know. What I've learned now, I think, is that health can play a role, and like toxins in the body, metals in the body, especially in the brain, like where they sit in the brain can impact, like almost like short circuiting, I think, the brain, like depending upon alloys and metals and, how exactly the composition and exactly where they're sitting. But I didn't really know that at the time. They didn't say too much as far as a cause, but what they told me at the time is that this is kind of the age range. They said this usually onsets between like age 17 and 22 or so, like, late early 20s. So they said, okay, this is like right in that time frame. And so
it's weird. It's like hormone change or something changed.
Right. So I think I just went with it. And I mean, so many times in medicine, they don't always know the why. So I guess I just didn't think too much of them not knowing the why. But I know they had said that it was going to be, challenging, that there was going to be.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you feel, Stephanie? Did you feel like you didn't know him anymore, or you wanted to help him? Or,
I definitely wanted to help him. It really hurt me a lot to see him struggling and feeling so depressed and terrible. And I was just constantly worried about him. I mean, no one wants to see their loved ones feeling, like they want to take their life, and going through this new process. It's almost like, starting a new life in a sense, because now, you have to take medication and take care of your mental health. And it was just really hard. And I remember, you know, with all the new medicines he was trying, sometimes the medicines would help. And so he felt like he didn't need to take them anymore. And he would go off of his medication, and then things would get really bad again. So I was just really worried. I felt like almost like a mother. I wanted to make sure that he was taking his medicine, taking care of himself so he could feel good. And it was tough. I mean, it's really hard to see a loved one go through that.
Oh, for sure. Especially when you've been so close to them.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's weird when you think you've known somebody, but you really don't know them. I think that's the weirdest part.
Definitely. It's really sad. I mean, for anyone else out there who's listening to this, they can, vouch for it. It's terrible. And I mean, all I wanted to do was help him and fix him, but I mean, you just can't.
I think women in general want to fix boyfriends, and they want to fix
Yeah.
husbands, and we just want to fix, but there's no fixing. I don't think it's their journey for some reason. I don't quite understand what that journey looks like or why, but it just happens so often. I don't get it.
I think and like as a mom, it's hard because like you wanna make everything good for your kids, and so you feel almost powerless. And this is a lot of what moms go through that have a son or daughter that is going through this. Is some part of you feels like it is your responsibility to fix it, but then you really can't. You don't have that power, and so then there's this inner turmoil going on, and it's really hard to sit there and watch your loved one suffer. And it's almost like I didn't realize this till much later, but a grieving process that you go through because your child is so different, like from pre mental illness and drugs. Like it's just such a huge change. And I don't think I realized that I needed to go through that grieving process until many years later.
It's kind of too late after that point. You're really going through the true grief after that point.
Yeah.
And how old were you, Stephanie, when this was all going on?
I would say I was probably around maybe 13 or 14 when it started with him. And, now that I'm an adult and, I can realize things and how deep, the how deep things really were. I feel for my mom so much because as a sibling, it was so hard, and I'm not diminishing that, but, like, as a mother, that's a whole different type of pain and feeling, and so I really feel for my mom a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. And still do, because
Yeah.
it just
Oh,
doesn't stop.
100%.
Yeah. Um, what do you think? I know in our other shows we talked about all the things that you tried to do and all the things that he did. And just to summarize it, you want to summarize it for everybody to kind of bring you up to the
Yeah.
part where.
He, I mean, in the beginning, I would say the first couple of years he spent in and out of hospitals, and each stay was maybe approximately a week, which really doesn't, in a week, doesn't really do too much. It was more to stabilize him. And like Stephanie had mentioned, is he'd go through phases where he would stop medications, either because he thought he felt better, or because he hated the side effects, or because he just ran out.
Or he just
And
didn't want to.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was kind of on and off throughout, the 9 years. And and then when the drugs got really, really bad, around the age of 19, there was one year where he was in and out of rehabs 3 different times in less than a year. And at that point, he was, using almost every drug under the sun. In fact, one of the rehabs, he and like 3 other of the guys like left and drove like an hour away to buy heroin, and got found out and got kicked out. And that was the first time that I found out he was using heroin, and that was really scary. And the drugs became definitely a really big issue. And over the next several years after that, we almost lost him a number of times to an overdose. And to the point where I think each time they probably gave him the Narcan, and that was before Narcan was readily available like it is now. Back then, it was just given to the emergency personnel in the hospitals. It wasn't something that you could get as a parent or a friend
On
or
the
a sibling
street.
or anything. Yeah, you couldn't get it even though it was life-saving. Now, fortunately, you can. But it did save his life several times, and that was really scary. And I
Did he
know,
ever talk about the times that he was saved and that he was glad to come back? Or was it, like.
gosh, I don't, it wasn't until later, after he passed away, that I started wondering what it was like for him. Like, as I started learning more about like afterlife and after you pass and all that stuff, and near death experiences, I started wondering what it felt like for him um, when we had almost lost him. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I remember a few of the times talking to him about, how serious this was, and, him kind of promising like, okay, I'm not going to use drugs anymore. But unfortunately, it just, it kind of came in waves. And over the next, into his 20s and everything, he went through phases. Like, he
Yeah.
would he would put himself in the hospital, he would put himself in rehab, he would, and he would, tell us how excited he was that he was going to get better and not going to use anymore. And he was really serious this time. And he'd go to the outpatient after the rehab and have a counselor and everything. And he'd go through phases, and it kind of came in waves. It didn't stay for long periods of time.
I mean, look at Lisa Marie Presley's son. Look at Robin Williams. Look at Amy Winehouse. It's just such a mental illness that I don't know if we could comprehend it, but it would have been interesting to hear what he had to say in between all of those episodes. What did people think? Do they just want to escape so badly? Like, what is it really?
I feel like for him, life was really hard. He had a seizure disorder. He had type 1 diabetes. And he had seizures. I say a seizure disorder. It was one that the seizure medication didn't seem to help, or maybe the drugs interfered with it and made it worse. I don't know, but he pretty much had seizures weekly, and sometimes would end up at the ER with stitches. And his diabetes was really out of control. He would many times end up in the hospital for a week at a time, almost in diabetic ketoacidosis, almost going into a coma with blood sugar over 900.
Is that from alcohol use then, usually?
I would imagine that there had to have been alcohol that interfered with it, because I don't know how it got so high. I don't even know how he survived it getting so high, because I don't think most people would make it to blood sugar that high. But he definitely had a lot of, and then, not to mention the mental illness that caused hallucinations, caused paranoia, caused suicidal thoughts. I mean, he had life was really hard. So I do think the drugs was like an escape. And I think it was just really tough for him. Two things he loved, well, actually three. He loved spending time with family, which was great. He'd get so excited when we were all going to get together. He was, like Stephanie described, we were all really close, the three of them and me. And he also loved religions, and he would find religion after religion after religion. But I feel like it was a place that he found acceptance, and a place he found that he found solace in it. And he also loved to study like genetics, like hereditary genetics. Yeah, like he'd been doing that since about age 14 or so. So those three things, I think, kept him going. Those three things worked in his favor, but all the other health issues kind of worked against him. So, maybe that was kind of why that battle back and forth, that battle to stay off the drugs and do well. And
the pressures came in.
Right.
But what do you think was so different from you than him, Stephanie? We all have pressures in life in certain times.
Well, I think that, I wasn't dealt the hand that he was, and I didn't have all these illnesses and stuff like that. So, in a sense, things were easier for me. We were obviously raised the same way, but like my
Uh-oh.
You're muted.
You were fine, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. No. That's weird. We lost her for a second here.
I see her, though.
Yeah. It's just audio.
We don't hear you, though. We still don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it just disappeared. That's okay.
Okay, like I was saying though, is he was dealt a very different hand than I was. And fortunately, I didn't have to deal with the, mental illnesses and physical illnesses and all that stuff. And, I think that, I believe that addiction, unfortunately, had
Was
to deal
just
with it that
too
way.
much.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't imagine walking in his shoes, being in his footsteps. So I think that he handled things the only way that he knew how. And he was very strong. I mean, he fought for so long. He really tried, and I watched him attempt to get sober so many times. And during those periods of sobriety, he really was trying, and and I'm proud of him for all that. And it was just a terrible disease that unfortunately he had to live with.
Did you have to worry every time that he went in for?
I was worried 24/7, honestly. Anytime that he would like I saw his name pop up on my phone, he would text or call me. I was so nervous. I mean, I would tell my boyfriend all the time about how I'm so worried about him. He didn't drive because of his seizure disorder. Like my mom mentioned, he would have seizures multiple times a week and they would be bad seizures. And so he didn't drive. So I would pick him up frequently and take him to the store, take him to the pharmacy, take him to go get food or wherever he needed to go, I would take him. It was to the point where it was almost daily that I was giving him rides places. And he would open up to me about things and some good, some bad, but I was just constantly worried about him. I mean, as soon as I would drop him off at home and go back to my house, I would be worried about him all the time. And I remember there was a few times, or there was one in specific where I was at work and my mom called me or texted me and she was really, really worried about Alex and she lived about an hour away from him at the time and I was closer. So she wanted me to go check in on him and make sure he was okay because they previously were, I guess, talking and he mentioned that he was feeling suicidal. So I was just extremely worried. I couldn't even finish out my shift. I immediately left work early and I drove to his house and checked on him. And fortunately, he was okay. But
You just
I
don't
just
know.
yeah, I felt like it kept me from sleeping at night some nights because I was just constantly worried about him.
Yeah, that's a horrible way to live, isn't it? To always be worried.
Yeah, no,
It's
definitely.
it's kind of, I guess it's kind of similar to having someone with dementia or cancer, and they're in treatment, and you are hoping for the best, and you're hoping for some miracle to happen, and you have all this hope, but every time you keep on getting dinged every now and then, like that.
Yeah.
He didn't take his medicine or whatever. It's the same way, I think, for many people struggling through this. It's not just him that's struggling through the journey, but it's everybody involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds
Definitely.
me.
In a sense. Oh, you go.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in a sense, it became our normal because we had dealt with it for so many years that we just found a way to kind of adjust and live with it and still support him and wish the best for him, but just accept that, you know, this is our reality and his reality, and we can't do anything to change it besides, of course, support him and try to offer our help, but it just we got used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know how you get used to that. You
Yeah,
love
like
somebody so much,
yeah.
and you don't want anything bad to happen. Yeah, that's crazy.
Like
So,
Stephanie said, it's some level of acceptance because I mean, we had to accept him the way he was. in order to just be present and love him and still have a close relationship with him. I think if we were always trying to make him be somebody different, then that would probably not, because we didn't have the power to make him be different.
No.
So but being supportive, being there for him, that helped, that made a difference. That is things that we could do for him, but we had to just have some level of acceptance that he didn't always, want the same things for himself that we wanted for him.
No. Question for both of you. I think the question I have is, what do you think that you did for him that helped him not take his life, but it helped him improve? Was there anything that you felt that you did that you could see a little simmer of light of some sort?
Well, for me, I would say is I would constantly reassure him that, you know, I'm here to listen to him and I'll always love him no matter what. And that I'm not judging him and I care for him. And I would constantly try to motivate him and tell him that he can do anything that he sets his mind to. And that, just keep reminding him how loved he is and how strong he is for, putting up with everything for so long. And,
Yeah.
I just, I would text him sometimes, just little messages randomly like, "Hey, I love you. I'm here for you. If you need anything, let me know." Like I said, I would give him rides all the time to go make sure he had what he needed, food, groceries, his medication, anything like that. I would buy him food sometimes if he didn't have any money. Um, just would
Just there.
give
You were
him
there.
words, yeah, and give him words of affirmation and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that must have helped him at some point, I'm sure maybe it would have happened sooner or something. I guess we just never know what this whole thing does. It's
Yeah.
mental illness. I don't know. It's just becoming this big. I think it's worse than the pandemic. Honestly,
Yeah, me
probably up
too.
there with the war now. Like, it's craziness.
Yeah.
The loss of people and the loss of the lives that you don't want to lose. I mean, I just don't know how you can get through it and keep focused and stay, okay, nothing's going to happen to him. This is how I would be in my head, in my own head. Okay, nothing's going to happen to him. We're just going to go down this road now, and this is how it's going to, like, that's what I'm thinking I would do in my head.
I think what we
Yeah.
had to do is enjoy the times we had with him, because we were fortunate that one of the things he loved was family. So he was always, even as a teenager, he'd get so excited if we were going to have he lived with us, so it was maybe inviting like the grandparents over or something, but he'd get so excited he'd rather be with family than go be with friends.
Yeah.
And in his later years, he was so happy every time, we organized something with the four of us together. But I would say that has helped him a lot. Like our relationship with him, I feel like that closeness, that bond that we all had, and like Stephanie shared, none of us judged him. I mean, I was the same way, and his brother was the same way, and we all just loved him, and we're there for him, and we're kind of that safe space for him, which is why he would confide in us, maybe not in every moment, but like
As
along the
much.
way, lots of times. Yeah, lots of times. And I feel like just, being there to support him and just to let him know how much we love him. And that was one thing that I loved about him. Like we never hung up the phone or like left a get together without exchanging I love yous and hugs. if it was in person hugs.
Yeah.
And so he was just a really loving person. And so, just, I feel like you had asked, what things helped him. And I feel like just that being able to be present with him and being able to be, enjoy those moments with him and be that safe space for him and, have that closeness.
Well, I'm sure he was very, very lucky, to have both of you and your brother too, Stephanie, because I mean, I can see a lot of parents just getting mad at them, like getting angry and why are you like this? Like I could just picture that.
Yeah, fortunately, my mom was so understanding. I mean, even for me, if I would, get in trouble or something as a child, my mom was so understanding. I always felt really comfortable going to my mom for anything and everything, and I know my brother felt the same way. So we were very fortunate to have, the mother that we have.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot different if he was, born into a different family. I mean, it's great that my mom is so understanding.
Well, and I'm sure, I mean, you tried your best, Debbie, to what you can possibly do without, I mean, you don't have control over everything. So
No.
I guess that's the hardest part.
I think that's where sometimes, I think parents that get angry at these situations, I think that it can come from a few places. Like one is like them blaming themselves and not knowing how to fix it, and that frustration that they're experiencing, and like, it just letting that out. And I think, and not taking it personally, like, Alex definitely did lash out. I mean, if he was actively on drugs, like, yeah, he could definitely say things that, were mean. And I mean, there were definite moments. Every moment wasn't perfect and loving. I mean, because he was using drugs. But I think the thing is that it wasn't personal. He wasn't doing these things to hurt us or to, it wasn't about any of us. It was just about what he was going through. I mean, addiction is an illness in and of itself. It's like he had two large mental illnesses, the mental illness and the addiction, and it's huge, and they're not about other people, like, but it affects their brain, and so they can say and do things that, maybe they wouldn't normally
have done normally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think a lot of times people do take it personally. And I think that's a good point to make to parents or family that are going through this right now, is to realize that it's not about them. It's about the person that is having this journey that you might not appreciate. Right? Of course I don't appreciate it. Of course I don't want to be part of it, but you are.
And a lot of people don't see their strength, like Stephanie mentioned. To be able to endure all the things that he went through day after day, like hour after hour, minute after minute, like, I mean, I don't know. That would be really hard. Like, how many people really put themselves in their shoes, and how, that would be so hard to have to deal with that stuff on a daily basis. And he was so strong to be able to endure it. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot. It's a real lot. It kind of reminds me of a movie. Maybe you remember, Stephanie. I can't think of the actors in it, but it's in England, and she goes in as a nanny, like as a caregiver, to help the rich family son who had a ski accident and became paralyzed. And he did not like his life now. He couldn't drink by himself. He couldn't eat by himself. He would just say, I'm useless. And they fell in love. Does that ring a bell? I wish I could
No,
remember
but
the
it
name.
sounds like a good movie. I'm ready to watch it.
It just kind of reminds me of him because he did not want to live because he was not used to that lifestyle of like he didn't want to have to be fed in public and he didn't he didn't want to be in a wheelchair all his life and I can see that just like your son didn't want to have all these issues.
Yeah, it's a whole new life, and you have to grieve your old life and accept that this is, your new reality going forward. I can only imagine how hard it is.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
feel
not.
like he I feel like he wanted to help people too, because this is one thing I was going to say earlier, and I'm just reminded again is in the later years, I guess maybe only a year or so before he passed away, I remember he had been he had been in a treatment center. He came out and he was in a like an outpatient, but it was virtual because of COVID. And he was in a group, and there was a counselor. He loved the counselor, Vicky, and there was a number of other people in his group, and they'd meet every day. And I remember we found out like he was drinking again or something. He wasn't using drugs, but he was drinking. And we said, what about, asking for help in your group? And he's like, oh, no, 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 no. He's like, I help them. They look up to me.
Oh,
And I remember Vicky saying that he's always the one volunteering to help others and to share with others and to support others. And so they looked up to him. And so he couldn't let on that he started drinking because he had to be there for other people.
I had another girl on who lost her boyfriend and they had a little boy with together and they met in rehab and she was on my show as well. And it was interesting because he was helping in this as a counselor and he overdosed. Like, that's crazy because just like your son and your brother, they want to help other people. They can't really tell people what's really going on up there. Right?
Yeah.
That's
What I've heard in the many years that I had attended Al-Anon, which is a great group, by the way, for any parent who's going through this with their child, is Al-Anon's a great support group. But one thing that I remember they had encouraged us is to go sit in on open AA meetings and just listen to that perspective from the addict. And I remember the people who had been in sober in AA for many years, 20, 30 years, them saying each day is a new day, and each day they wake up and have to recommit to not using alcohol or drugs. And I think that basically any time it could happen. So it doesn't matter. And many of the counselors are former addicts just because they've been through it. Many times people can relate to somebody who's been in their shoes. And so people can relate to those counselors who have been through it. So it actually doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think that sort of thing doesn't happen because I remember somebody going up to get his 1-year chip, but he also had like a 20-year chip. So he had done 20 years and then he relapsed and then he got back in the program. So I think it happens.
Yeah. Do you see anything like that too, Stephanie, from your point of view?
Yeah, I've definitely seen stuff like that, and I would go with Alex sometimes to when anytime he would be in rehab. Typically, like 1 day a week, usually Sundays, but not always. They would have like a family group, so all
Oh,
the patients in the rehab would sit there and their family members would come, usually their parents, siblings, partners, anything like that. And if my mom was unable to go that week, I would step in and go to show my brother support. And I remember that the counselors there were all in recovery as well, and had like 7 years sober, 10 years, 20, whatever it may be. So, you know, I've definitely seen stuff like that.
yeah. That sounds interesting. And I think it's a good point for listeners as well, to make sure that they participate and watch what others have gone through, so that they find out that it's actually common and not just their person itself, right? It's usually
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly
Yeah.
tell everybody to like, share, and subscribe if you already haven't already, down here below in the box. And that's about it. If you want to be amazing, join us, because we're amazing, right? um, I just think that, I talk to paramedics all the time, and they say, oh, I've been to that same person twice in a day, trying to get them to come back to life, basically. And it's a struggle, like you said, every minute, every day, every week, every month. It's just a struggle. Not sure why, but it is. Do you have any good tips for people, like from your point of view as a sibling and your point of view as a mom? Other than
That's a
going
good
to
question.
Al-Anon?
Yeah.
I would say try your best to do some research about addiction so that you can learn more and kind of see that it's a disease and it's not, in my opinion, it's not a choice. And yeah, I would just recommend doing research to really learn, how it is. Maybe talk to someone who's in a similar position, who has a loved one going through addiction, just so that you can learn about it more and see that you're not alone.
Especially from a sibling point of view as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's really tough. But what helped me was, talking to other people going through something similar and just learning more about it.
Yeah. So that's a good point. What about you, Debbie? Do you think there's anything in particular?
I would say, as a parent, to not blame yourself and not take it personally, because when you take those two things out of the picture, I feel like you're in a better place to be able to at least have a more closer relationship with your child. Because when you stop blaming yourself and you stop taking things personally that they say, then it's in a whole different light. And also, this can be hard, but trying to put yourself in the other person's position. And so many times when we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, we do it based upon still our own head and what we would think, but try to put yourself in their shoes based on what you know about them and how they think and feel, just to
Yeah.
get that understanding and perspective to what they're going through, so that you can have some compassion. Because when you can have some compassion and take the blame away and take the judgment away, I think then that opens up the door to having a closer relationship with them.
Yeah. What about shame? It's an interesting one. Did you feel any shame, Stephanie, from your point of view? Like
Um,
not wanting to
I
say
think,
anything to friends or something, about your brother or whatever?
yeah, I think at first, a lot of my friends, because I had been friends with them for a while, and they would come to our house or, things like that. So they had known Alex, my brother, before kind of these things started happening with him. And so it was such a, like such a switch. And I didn't really want to disclose to them, what he's going through now and stuff because they knew him before.
Yeah.
And I did feel a little bit of shame about it at first, but I started to, I needed someone to talk to about it besides my mom and my other brother. And so I would start telling, some of my friends about it. And I did feel like at first maybe a little bit of judgment because just they've never experienced something like that. And it was tough. But then I stopped feeling shameful about it because I just put myself in his shoes and I reminded myself that none of this is his fault at all.
Right. Right. You feel more shameful when it's like somebody's gone to prison or something because he actually, did it or something. But
Yeah,
in
and
this
Alex
case,
had a huge heart.
yeah,
Yeah, he had a huge heart. I mean, he cared about everybody. He was so kind to everybody, and he would make friends with anybody and everybody, even like homeless people that he meets on the street. He would talk to anybody. He was a very, very sweet, caring guy.
oh, that's horrible. Well, not that part. It's horrible, but
Yeah, I know
it's
what you
horrible that
mean.
like we just don't have enough kind-hearted people in the world, and it's just not fair. Universe, why did you take such a beautiful soul away from that could help so many other people? I just, you
Yeah.
get to the point where I don't get it. Just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Debbie? What did you feel shame at first or at all or
That's a good question. I think at first, well, I was already in Al Anon when he first went into the hospital. I was already in Al Anon for a spouse, but I so I had the those were mostly like sort of my world, so I felt comfortable to share with them, and I
so
think
that was
my life,
helpful in a way, I guess,
it
too,
was
right?
helpful. And my life was so, in the beginning, it was so turned upside down by the hospitalization and all the research and trying to find the doctors and the therapist and the medication
Medicine.
trial and error and just everything that I'm not sure that I don't know. But I do know new people. I was really careful what I shared. And I don't know if it was shame or protectiveness or not trusting them to share this kind of information with. So new people, I was very cautious. I think
Yeah.
I was definitely aware that there was, a stigma around mental illness and addiction. And that may be also why I was, very cautious to share with anybody new. But the small circle of people that I had around me, I felt
We're
safe.
fine. Oh, good.
So I was fortunate in that, but new people, I was really, really, really cautious. But then
I,
in the later years, I think I was not as cautious, maybe because I trusted myself more, in dealing with this and how far we had come with handling it and dealing with it, and kind of made my peace around, not that I liked what was happening, but I had, made peace in my life around what was happening. And so I think that I was more open about sharing because the potential to maybe help another person that was going through something similar.
well, and I think there's so many people, like even celebrities don't want to share it until something else happens, right? It's just they
Yeah.
I don't know if it's shame. I think sometimes it might not even be just shame from your side, but it might be if you're
Trust.
talking to someone, you're thinking, well, they're not going to understand,
Yeah.
right? They don't
Yeah.
understand or they've never experienced anything like this. So how do I even start explaining that?
Yeah. I
And
think
also
that
wanting to, oh,
I was going to
you
say,
go.
yeah, I think
Mm.
I think outside of the people in Al Anon, I think I felt really alone because I felt like everyone else's life looked normal, at least from the outside. And I felt like I was the only one kind of going through this in
Yeah.
the big scheme of the world outside of the Al Anon people. And even with Al Anon, a lot of them weren't necessarily dealing with the mental illness. Maybe they were just dealing with a family member with addiction. So it still was a little bit, I still in some
Different.
ways felt alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And what were you going to say, Stephanie?
I was gonna say that also kind of like what my mom was saying earlier about maybe not sharing things with everybody to protect him. I also wanted to respect his privacy, and so I didn't always want to just go sharing all his business to everybody. my friends, maybe some of my friends had an older sibling who knew him or something like that, and I didn't want to just air out his business like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I would only want to share things that he's comfortable with me sharing with people.
Which makes it awkward because you feel like you're walking on broken glass, because
Yeah,
it's such a hard thing to go through and feel like you're the only one doing it in the world, and you're not. Apparently, what is it, 1 in 4 now or something crazy?
wow,
Yeah, it's
probably. When you're going through it, it feels like you're the only one in the world.
Yeah, for sure it does.
yeah,
And a mother too, right?
yeah. Especially I think because there are a lot of people who keep it to themselves for any number of reasons that we've just kind of talked about. And so then you're just seeing sort of what somebody wants you to see. And so to you, it looks like everyone else is having a normal life.
Yeah.
And, back then when he was first diagnosed, it wasn't talked about as much as it is today.
Definitely.
And how much we've come through with all of this, actually every year it's gotten better, I think.
It has gotten better over the
I
years.
mean, when Michael Jackson overdosed and had mental health issues, and yeah, it's crazy how far we've come, really.
Yeah.
What
We've come
kind of final message would you say, Stephanie, to the listeners, but from a point of, if you were going to talk to a friend at school or a friend at work and they're just started going through this, what kind of message would you give them?
I would tell them to definitely share with someone how you're feeling. Don't keep it bottled up inside because that's just a terrible feeling. You need to at least find one person that you're comfortable venting to. And
Support.
yeah, and I would say do some research and learn about addiction and or whatever mental health or mental illness they have, and try to really put yourself in their shoes and show them compassion, but make sure that you can set healthy boundaries for yourself as well and only do what you feel comfortable doing.
Those are good tips. I like those. Those are great.
Thank you.
What about you, Debbie, from a perspective of a mom to another mom? What do you think you would say?
I would say you want to make the most of the time that you have with your child, no matter what they're going through. We never know how long anyone has, and you want to really be present and be there for him. And so if that means you need to let go of blaming yourself, let go of blaming them, put yourself in their shoes, all the tips that we've given you, but really focus on building those precious memories. And even if things are not the way you want them to be, stop waiting. Don't say, okay, yes, I'm going to do this as soon as they stop using drugs or alcohol, or as soon as they get back on their meds and they're stable. No, you can do that now because they're going to be up and down. That happens. And maybe you're lucky and they won't. Maybe they'll find sobriety and they'll get on the right medications and their life will be very steady. But many times it's not that way. And so make the most of the moments you have with them. You can still have a close relationship with them. So enjoy those moments.
Those are great tips from both of you. And, I think if I was to say that to anybody too, I would say, I don't think we'll ever regret, ever. There's never going to be a time that you're going to say, geez, why did I spend my whole Christmas holidays with them? And then they go ahead and just die. Like, that's never going to happen. You're never going to say, I wish I didn't, but you're going to say, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's basically what you're saying is. And you really don't know your parent, your sibling, your friend, your neighbor, it doesn't matter. You just never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming on the show and really coming from your heart to help, other listeners that are going through this too. We know they are somewhere out there. There's a lot of us.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so much
us.
for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And any listeners have any questions, I know Debbie's always open for me to send her a message and let her know, or I'll have her contact information down below as well. So she can either, if it's a question for Stephanie or for herself as a mom, feel free to ask questions if you're not sure. Maybe you might have an avenue that maybe they could go to or get more advice from, or a book or whatever it might be. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. I know it's not easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy, did they? They didn't tell us that part in the manual either.
Unfortunately not. They left that part out.
Oh, geez. They left a lot of that out there, I tell you.
Yeah.
So everybody, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you know somebody going through this right now, make sure you like and share it with others, because it will help somebody. You never know when it might just help them in the moment or in the future or whatever it might be. And we're not Superman. We think we are, but we're definitely not, because nothing's going to happen. No, something will happen. We know something's going to happen to us at some point in time. We just don't know what, and we don't know when. So you can look at the last 5 years in the world, and you look around everywhere, and there's shootings in the streets, and there's shootings in the schools, and there's work accidents and car accidents and overdoses and the pandemic and crazy wars that we're going through today and last year even, and today there's even more. And the disasters and the wildfires and the hurricanes and tornadoes. I mean, the list goes on. So we're not Superman in the world. And, just maybe think of that we can be better prepared for the unexpected if we just take a few minutes and get some help in doing that. And you've got the right place to go to. You can come contact us, and making sure that you do that. And if you are thinking of that special someone right now that you haven't talked to or told, in the last little while, how much you love and care about them, make sure you do that, because you don't know how many birthdays they're going to have left, and you don't know what tomorrow might bring. So call them, knock on their door, FaceTime them, whatever it means, but tell them how much you love and care about them today. And that being said, I always end with Carol Burnett. Debbie knows that from being on the show. And I'm not a great singer, so just heads up on that one. I'm not a great singer at all, but hey, I try. So, Carol Burnett has to give me that credit, right? So I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. And I know I'm going to have these two beautiful souls back on our show again to help other people get through what they're going through, or what they've gone through, or what their journey looks like at the moment. And I know it will help lots of people out there. And I think that's why Stephanie and Debbie are here too, to make sure that they can feel like they can help others as well. So stay tuned for our next week's show. I'm so grateful to have you all here, and thank you for all the likes and shares. And thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Stephanie, for taking time out of your days and coming on our show to help others.
Anytime.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Till next time, stay safe and be kind. Till next week. Love you. Bye.